Oops, hit down.
All right, so we're gonna get started. I'll make this big. This isn't the world's greatest video to start off with, but
from Iraq.
It's from Iraq. It's cool. Who knows? You know, she had to do that, otherwise she'd be punished. So we've been talking about a cadence of 180 forever now. So the reason we've been doing that is because it's not that it's the greatest cadence in the world, but it is certainly a start to the cadence you need to run. So sometimes people will wind up at 178, which is every step, 178. I'm going to mute all of you because I'm tired of that. And sometimes it winds up being, if you're a world-class marathoner, about 200. And what we're talking about is every step. So, you know, if you were just counting your right foot, it would be 100 for 200, it'd be 90 for 180. So we've been working on 180, a lot of us, because that's a good place to start. You might not settle in there. You might settle in at 178. You might settle in at 186. But by me telling you 180 gives you a good place to start. The problem is when I tell people to run at a cadence of 180, the first thing they start doing is marching, and their speeds come way down. So what happens? Oh, that is too loud for me. So what happens is people start marching. So they're going up and down trying to get that cadence to 180, and their stride lengths shrink. They go down from maybe a meter, maybe 2 meters down to a meter, because you're trying to move your feet up and down a lot, which is good. That's what you have to do to start. So now we've got a cadence of 180. Now we've got to start moving your feet faster and longer. And one of the problems we always run into is that people think that you don't need a running coach or you don't need to do running drills because you know how to run. Well, really, you don't. It's improper to say you have bad running form, but everybody can improve the way they run. Just by doing drills and being conscious of what they're trying to accomplish, you can run faster and do better whenever you do run. So every run, unless you're totally pressed for time, should include some set of drills. And I'm going to include this for whoever didn't get it. I'm going to include this drill, and it looks better when it's a little smaller. But this video shows you just about every running drill you can imagine. That's why it's so good to do before you run. So maybe you do 2 or 3 of them. Maybe you make a list of all those, all the drills you see on the video, and you go over them 3 one day, 3 the next day, 3 the next day. But you should always start your run with some set of drills. If you got a 5-mile run, make the first mile, the first half mile, just drills, because you're not going to lose anything. You're going to gain speed, because what you're losing in the time that you run, you're going to gain in the stride. All these drills are just designed to make your feet move faster, make your hips and your knees go higher, and make you follow through better, so that when you go to run, you're doing the right thing. So if you're looking at the video now, she's doing the straight leg high step, and then just a skip, and then you're throwing your hips up high, just a smaller skip version. But all of these are great, great drills. You could look on YouTube in 10 different spots, you'd see all of them, but this is a perfect place to go to see all the drills you can do. So let's get out of that one for a second. Now I am gonna see this, make this a little smaller. So now while I got you all here, has anybody got any questions on these drills? So you see when I made it a little smaller, it looks a little better. But she's opening up her hips, moving her legs fast. And what I'll do is I will include, everybody's here, I'll send them an email of all the links you'll see here so that there's nothing that you miss. I think Jeff would look really good doing that drill. All right. So now you got
so guys, especially let me speak
okay,
up.
good. Oh, there we go. Yep.
So the reason we do these drills is to activate the correct muscles. Like a lot of people have running injuries, they have knee injuries, hip injuries. By doing these drills, you're teaching your body to move the correct way. So it's not just to look like an idiot doing these crosses, doing the karaoke and all that stuff, and the A skip, B skip. You look like a fool out there. They look at you and say, what's that guy doing? But you're activating the correct muscles so your body moves the right way when you start to run. So you do 5 minutes easy, you do a few drills, and you go run the rest of your run, and you're moving the correct way. So I was just speaking to an athlete about this yesterday as she was having major calf issues. So she started incorporating these 3 or 4 drills after 5 minutes warm up. She'd do 3 or 4 drills and start running, and her calf issues went away because her body was moving in the way it should be moving. So pick 3 or 4, do them every run about 5 minutes after you warm up, and you will start moving the right way.
Yeah, and like Jim said, you're trying to activate those muscles so that when we do try to get you to take a higher knee lift or start kicking your butt, nothing is unfamiliar to you. Your muscles all realize what they're supposed to be doing, and it's not a big deal to them. They've got the message. So now we're going to take a little look at, I'm going to make this a little bigger for everybody. So we're going to look at Jim's pal, Meb. And we're going to move this forward just a little bit. And we're going to,
that's how I read it.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure it is. So we're gonna look at a lot of the runners, and like I said, nobody runs perfect. But let me take care of that.
Okay.
Manage you guys. Oh, there you are.
I see your package.
I'm home. I'm home. I'll pick that up. There's a package.
So we'll look at, I'll unmute you in a second, Jim. So the first thing we want to do when we're looking at Meb, and it's really simple, it's where he's looking. A lot of us, especially when we get tired, we tend to start looking down. So if we're running, our gaze goes down into here. We're just looking maybe 2 or 3 yards out in front of ourselves. And you know, I'm not talking about trail runners because that's a whole different story. But when you're running, you need to have your head up nice and straight and looking, you know, 100 meters or so down the road. So you could see Meb, when we're looking at where he's gazing, his head is down the road. And it keeps his head in proper position because his eyes are looking where he wants to go instead of gazing down in front of him or dropping his eyes. And that's what happens when you get tired. But when you're in good shape, you want to keep those eyes nice and straight down the road, 100, 200 meters, yards for those Americans in the crowd. So that's the first thing we want to talk about. As we move forward a little bit more, we want to start to look at his shoulders. So we've seen that he's looking down the road. And if you look at his shoulders across here, you'll see one shoulder will come back and the other shoulder comes forward. As this shoulder here comes back, his other hip is going forward over here. And this will look better on some of the other ones when we get to the front. But his opposite shoulder, his opposite hip is forward. And what it does is it creates a little tension in his abdomen. So that tension, by dropping one shoulder back and one hip forward, will help him as he moves forward to move that other hip, this one, out this way. So let's pay particular attention to his hips and his shoulders as he moves a little bit forward here. See how far back his hip came and how his opposite shoulder falls backwards. So, and we talk about this a lot when we talk about strong core. What we're trying to do is build that strong core that allow that tension to build to help you throw that hip forward with that shoulder going back. So I'm going to unmute all of you here a second. So do you see what I'm trying to say with that shoulder and hip thing? Everybody, I guess, can see that. Let's continue a little bit farther. Let's look at, let's try and look at his arm next. He's got a nice 45-degree angle here. Let me mute you guys all again. And you could see that 45-degree angle carry as he runs forward. So his arms stay relaxed, but they assist his shoulder going back and assist his hip coming forward. So if we watch him again slowly, shoulder back with the arm and shoulder front, they create a nice little, they create nice tension in the abdomen, and they allow his hip to come forward and throw it out in front of him. Let's take that off here 1 second, and we'll go back one more time. See, we have a nice turn of the torso. We have just a little crossover of the arms, but mostly the arms are to the side and not crossing over. Now, if you look, now we'll take one more look before we open it up to some questions. Let's take a look at his arms, his foot and his foot strike. He moves at about a cadence of 190 or so. You'll see his rear leg. When it finishes, it'll be nice and straight. And his front leg, because he's moving at a nice cadence, he'll have a nice mid-foot strike underneath his hips. So we've talked about cadence a lot, and we know that if we can stabilize our cadence at 180, 178, the only thing we have to do to get faster is increase stride length. We don't have to increase stride length and increase cadence to get faster. We're already running at 180. All we need to do is then increase our length of our stride. So if we watch him run across one more time, we'll see how he finishes with a nice long push off on that back leg and lands with a nice mid-foot strike. And the mid-foot strike isn't something he's thinking about. It's just his cadence causes that to happen. If you're running slower, the longer stride will cause more of a heel strike. One last thing before we leave Meb and then open it up to some more questions is that when you start talking about stride length, and a lot of us have Garmin's, a lot of us can see on Connect what our stride length is. And you'll see it. Meb's stride length, oh, I'm going to try and get it here, right there. Oh, dang it. Back it up a little bit. We'll draw. His stride length from where he strikes his foot to his back foot is as about 90% of his height. So when you start looking at your Garmin and your Garmin Connect, it'll tell you how long your stride length is. And a lot of us, especially when we first start running at a cadence of 180, our stride length is maybe 50% of our height. So as we run faster, as we extend that hip farther out in front and drop that other hip farther behind is what's going to create a longer stride length. So one more time, we'll erase everything on Meb, open up some questions before we move on to our next example. So here he comes across. Look at how long that stride length is from toe to where his other foot leaves. So if you're running at a cadence of 180, your stride length is greater than 65% of your height, you're going to be fast. There's nothing you can do to stop it. All right, so we're opening it up to questions here as we watch Ned go by one more time. Can everybody see what I'm talking about when we talk about that abdominal tension? Because he's turning his hips. If one hip goes forward, one shoulder goes back. So when you're out there running, a lot of times you won't get any shoulder. Your shoulders will be straight as you run down the road. Hips will be straight, and it's just your legs moving. You need to create that extra turn without going sideways as you run.
So a good way, I ran with Meb for a couple of years up in Mammoth. And I can tell you one thing, every run he does drills during it or before the run, and he does core every single night. So even at the level he's at, he's doing the little things every day to become a better elite athlete. One thing you can think of to keep the head still and the core engaged is that there's a string pulling you from the top of your head upward. So that's going to keep your posture nice and tall and your core engaged. So picture a puppeteer above you pulling a string and pulling you straight up. That's going to keep nice posture and keep the core engaged so that can drive you forward. The second thing you can think is stay in that frontal plane. Don't let anything cross over the midline. Just like when you're swimming, you don't want to cross over. Same thing when you're running. Knees straight forward, arms straight forward, head straight forward. If anything's crossing over, that's wasted movement. So first of all, picture a string pulling you from above, and second of all, keep everything in the frontal plane moving forward. And you'll do exactly what Bob's saying here.
Yeah, and like we said, when you're looking at your head, so his head is going forward, but his chest is also out in front of him. And although he's running straight and proud, he still has a nice little lean to him. A lot of times we'll do that cadence, and you'll notice it when you go to run tomorrow or the next day. You'll say, geez, my hips aren't moving anywhere, or my shoulders I can see my shoulders, both of them, from peripheral vision the entire time. So I'm going to mute you all again. And we'll let Meb run by us one more time, and we will move on. So nice, strong core. That core is going to carry you. Now, a lot of our videos today are from the side. One of the other good parts about a strong core is it keeps you from bending as you run. So if you could see it from the side, if I was looking at you from straight ahead and my right foot hit the ground, I don't want my right shoulder to sink to the ground. I want to keep those shoulders parallel to the ground. A good, strong core is what's going to help you do that. I got tired of Meb going that way, so we're going with Ryan going the other way. So like I said, not everybody does it exactly the same, but you can find a lot of the same things in each of these runners. Here again, we could see where Ryan's looking. He's looking straight down the road. Chest, although straight up, he's still got a little bit of an angle to him as he runs. And we could see he's got a nice mid-foot strike, not because he's thinking about it, but because his cadence makes him do that. If you're running at 180, that foot's going to land underneath you. So here it comes again. Now as we look at this, let's look at where his next foot lands. So he's got a nice high kick. That's what those butt kickers are for. Here's our foot landing where we had that red stripe before. Look at how long that stride is. He's about 93% of his height for his stride when he's running. And he does that by throwing that opposite hip out. So this hip here, oh, I missed my thing. This hip here is going out. This closer hip here is coming back. Opposite shoulders are doing the other thing, and we create a little tension here in the core that's going to help you whip that hip through and carry that knee through. You don't want all the action to occur in the legs. Your legs can only do so much. Okay. Let's erase our thing so we can see it. We'll get Jim in here a little bit. I'll get all of you in for some questions as we watch Ryan go by.
And this is why Bob and I have a lot of you guys do hill repeats, because by doing hill repeats, it forces you to run like this. You have to engage that hip. You have to push from the glutes. You have to lean forward. It mimics perfect running form. So that when you go flat, you can try and associate that feel with the regular running feel on the flat surface. So watch this and see how he runs across, and how, if you put an incline on there, he would be driving up the hill with his glutes, a little lean forward, just as you do when you guys do hill repeats.
Well, Ryan doesn't want to run now. I don't know why, but check this out. Oh yeah, he's there. We're going to move on to, let's see. Oh, we got the special guest video. This didn't come out as good as we had hoped, but it's still superstar runner.
What'd you do to this one, Bob?
It looks all fuzzy. Yeah, it is. Look at that.
No, I didn't know what you're doing with this. I thought you just wanted it for your own personal collection. Pass this one up.
I had to show that one. Sorry. Okay. So here we go again. We're watching Ryan and everybody else. It just, you know, we got great runners here, but you can see their follow through. And one of the things we tend to forget when we start to get into our little shuffle is just how much that follow through, the follow through with our kick, will help us drive that hip forward. So if we just shuffle and don't get that foot any higher than here, our quad has to pull that leg through. There's not a lot of help when you're pulling that leg through. But by elevating that kick in the back, you can then help use your hip to help engage your leg and pull it through with your leg or with your quads. So let's watch him pull it all the way through as he goes. See, hip up high, and that hip helps sling the leg forward instead of having to do everything with the quads. You could watch all of them as they go by. I think that's Meb in the back, isn't it? Nice high finishes, nice long strides. And that's what those drills help you do. One of the things everybody notices that they suffer when they start to slow down is they get into the Ironman shuffle or just lazy legs in the back. And what's happened is that we haven't built a strong enough core. We think it's because we're not strong enough runners, but actually it's because our core isn't strong enough to help carry us through. So much of running and swimming and biking is a strong core that allows you to stay upright, keep your hips straight and parallel to the ground instead of letting them sink, and assisting those legs so that everything's working. You can even see their arm swings all about 90 degrees, all getting back at least into their sides, helping them with the turn and helping them create that tension that helps them drive those hips through. Now, when you go to run, if you're gonna do this, you gotta do the drills and it'll come a little bit at a time. You don't want to try and start feeling like you're big and lopey out there. You want to try and build those hips and those quads and those hips and those abs to help carry you through. Okay, we're going to Flanagan. I was looking for a great one for her because she is a perfect, you know, technically she's such a great runner. And if I make this too big, it gets kind of fuzzy. But let's watch her go through. And this is what I was trying to get, is a little bit more action on the front. So if you watch her, the tension she puts in here, shoulder back, hip, you know, shoulder and hip in opposite directions, and that helps pull her hip through once she's finished her stride. She gets so much power out of that instead, you know, as in addition to her legs. You can see she loads up those abs, and those hips come flying through. Nice high finish, nice long strides. Who's that goober running next time? So let's watch her one more time. Do a little erase here. Again, as she's going through, watch for the tension in her abs and her shoulders. Watch for the nice side-by-side arm swing. She doesn't have any cross swinging to slow her down or take her in a different direction. Watch those hips pull those legs up through. Watch the nice long stride and the nice strong finish. Let me unmute you all for a second. Oh, who's that? That must be a Bell person.
No, I sent mine upstairs.
Oh, good.
Both upstairs. That's a Gavon.
So, and I think what'll happen as you start doing these drills and as you start realizing what we're talking about here, you'll notice a difference almost immediately. And really, the difference will start showing up in stride length. You won't have to do anything different but start turning those hips, turning those shoulders, and you'll notice an automatic increase in stride length, just like she has the increase. She has a nice, I think she is at 87%. So she runs 184 for a cadence, 84% of her height, and I think she's 5'7". So she's moving, and that's how she does it. Nice long finish. You can see her leg is almost straight at the finish before it kicks up. But what we tend to do is we tend to, now that we've talked so much about cadence, is we run with a flat hip and flat shoulders. They don't rotate. And when they do rotate, we tend to shift our arms across our bodies. She doesn't. She has a little cross, not much great, but those arms are moving, but they're moving side to side instead of moving across the body. A nice strong finish. So now what we're going to do is go back a little bit here and start to think about in our heads what we saw in those videos and what these drills are trying to get us to do. A lot of times we don't raise our knees high enough. Almost nobody except Jim finishes with a nice high kick like that. And here's another one. We're trying to rotate those shoulders and rotate those hips. So we don't want you to just do the drills. I mean, you could do these drills and not amount to anything. But in your head, start keeping pictures of those runners and, you know, look over them, go back over the YouTubes and start thinking about what these drills are trying to get you to do. All right. What kind of questions do we have out there?
Huh?
You're all unmuted, so you can ask any question.
You're welcome.
Anyone? No one? Heather? Hannah doesn't have a question?
Nope.
No, she's eating. Yeah, that's why she doesn't have a question.
The longer stride lengths, they don't cause more impact on your knees?
Well, that's a good question, because as you lengthen the stride length, as you lengthen your strides, we don't want you to lose cadence. And that's kind of the reason we started at the cadence, because now the cadence is kind of ingrained into how you run. So you're always running at 180. So as you gradually increase that stride length, that foot is still going to strike in the same spot. And you saw where they were striking. If we go back to Meb quick. Now his cadence, like I said, was over 180, and I can't remember exactly everybody's, but I think it was like 187. But still, he's got a nice mid to heel strength. You want some kind of heel strike, because as your heel strikes, and we'll move him back a little bit. Here it is right there. If you think of your heel hitting the ground, energy is going to be stored in your Achilles. So you put pressure onto the ground, energy stored in your Achilles tendon as you hit the ground. And as your foot starts to leave the ground, that energy is going to help move your foot off the ground. So if you took away if you went from some heel strike to just toe running, you lose that energy that you would build up. So you see a lot of sneakers, they have a little plate in them, they have a little spring in them. And what those do is they store energy in the heel so that as that foot comes back, it springs your foot up. A lot of marathoners, and I'll forget her name now, but who's the world record holder for the women? Somebody.
Patty Bell.
Yeah, no, she's second, but she's from England. She can't even touch, when she does toe touches, she can't touch the ground because her hamstrings and her Achilles and her calves are so tight that she can't bend all the way over. But what that helped her accomplish is it stored all that energy when it hit the ground, so that when her stride finished, it caused some spring to it. Does that make any sense? So you're not looking to increase your stride overnight to 80% of your height.
Right.
A lot of us are never going to get to 80% of our height in our stride length. But what you're looking to do is over a period of a month or 2 months, just look at that number and say, oh, okay, the other day I ran, mine was 0.93 meters, which was really short, or really small stride. So maybe next time I run, I just happen to glance at my Garmin and it's 1 meter. And I happen to glance at my Garmin 2 weeks later, it's 1.1. As long as we're tracking it in the correct direction, doing those drills, and being conscious of our hips and our shoulders, it's going to get us there. What will happen is it won't get us there when we don't pay attention to it all. Just like when we're trying to maintain race weight, if we ignore it entirely, we're just going to get big and round like
Sweetie chocolate chips. You put those away from me.
Yeah. Hey, the chips. Who's got the All right. Who else has got a question? Anyone? Patty, you have no questions?
So realistically, how long would it take to increase your stride to optimal distance?
What it'll take is, if we watch Meb here, can you still see Meb? Okay. So number one is his opposite hip, the one we really can't see that well, his left hip. It's got to be far forward out here. His right hip is back. His leg is long and straight. You can see that it's almost all the way out when his toe leaves the ground. This shoulder forward, opposite shoulder back, all at one time. That's what makes your stride longer, not running with shoulders that don't move and hips that don't move, just trying to make your legs longer. Just making your legs or stride longer in and of itself will net you a little bit, but it won't net you this great big distance that he's got. And it's very efficient because he's using his abdomen for a lot of the pulling and the pushing of his legs and his knees. So as you run, you do the drills, you can run and see, as you're looking straight ahead, see if your shoulders go back and forth. make sure you have a hip that comes forward and hip that goes back. Make sure your arms don't come in front of you, because if an arm comes in front of you, cuts across instead of out to the side, that means when it goes back, it's going out to the side. So arms out to the side, just like you're holding Pringles potato chips. If you pretend you're holding potato chips or hold your finger and your thumb together as you run, then it prevents you from crossing. If you go to cross, those things will drop out of your hands, or your finger and your thumb will open up.
A good way to visualize this when you're running is press off the ground behind you. That'll naturally lengthen your stride and give you more power in that stride that lengthens the stride. As triathletes, we're used to cycling 90 revolutions per minute on the bike. That's a lot of front end pulling the knees up. So when we go into the run, that's the Ironman shuffle. You're pulling your knees up from the front end. I mean, I'm sure all of you have seen pictures of yourself in a triathlon run and you're like, man, I look like an idiot because I look like I'm marching down this course. That's because you're so used to cycling, bringing the knees up, then you get on the run and you do the same thing. You have to change your movement pattern from the bike to the run. You got to go from lifting those knees in that linear motion on the bike to driving off the ground behind you in the run, so you can drive yourself forward more efficiently and more powerful and get that longer stride. It's not about just stretching the hips more and getting your legs longer, like Bob said. It's about getting more power out of each stride, and that's what gets you the longer stride. So think about pushing off the back, not running in the front.
And we've been doing a lot of drills. I know I keep setting people up with them, and they focus a lot on abs and hip work. And this is why, because, and here's another good shot of her as she goes by. If you watch, you will not see her shoulder. This shoulder here will not sink down to the ground in that direction. They stay flat across. And when you have weak abs, besides not being able to help you with your hips, that side, and you'll see it when you watch other runners, you'll see them, they'll drop that shoulder as they run. Her shoulders are nice and flat, hips are straight. She doesn't drop those hips and drop those shoulders as we run. And that's because she's got a great core. I mean, when she won the New York City Marathon and she came across with the flag, and I think there's a picture over here, boom. She has pretty good abs. And the reason that they all work on their abs is to hold the whole picture together. That's gonna take too long. And one of the things, I know we've talked about this when we swam, it's always good to look at other people as they run and not only pick up what they don't do right, but to pick up what they do right. And because it's hard to see ourselves when we're running, it's hard to see ourselves when we're swimming. But watching other people and saying, oh, okay, I see what Bob's talking about now. I see the person hips drop down to the ground. I see the shoulder drop. I see a shorter stride. And then you can start to fix those things in your stride. Any other last questions as we're getting close to my time?
So we should record ourselves running. We should set up.
I mean, if you have somebody with a camera, it's always good to record yourself running, because then you can look back at it. It's so hard to see exactly what you look at. To see, exactly how you look and exactly how your stride is. I mean, you get a little feedback from your Garmin, but visual. That's why they always say look at yourself when you're running across a glass-plated storefront. You can see yourself pretty good.
Just so you know, Bob, I love the strides, like those drills at the beginning. They're my favorite.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, those strides. I mean, all those drills just it makes running so much easier. It seems like, oh, okay, I got it.
I think that's why I'm so awesome. It's all those drills you give me. You know, it's hard, but
And I'm sorry that you ever met up with her. It wasn't that.
Unacceptable.
Facebook. So if we're running at 50% of the stride, our stride length's 50% of our height, and we want to get it higher to say 75, is that realistic? And how long do you think it would take to get there?
Oh, it's definitely realistic. I mean, you know, and it's hard to say, you know, it would depend on how often you did the drills and if you videotaped yourself and, you know, how much you pushed, but it's more realistic to take it over a little over time because, you know, those muscles, whichever muscles you've been using, in my case, not many, they're kind of used to what they're doing already. So if I want to take those muscles and lengthen them out, lengthen those tendons and get them to do things they're not used to, it's always better to, you know, take 2 to 3 months to do it and gradual. And just like anything else, it's not going to be a straight line. You're not going to go from 50% to 70% by increasing your stride length 2% every day. There's going to be days where it goes a little shorter, maybe days where you have a fast run where it's really long, and then days where it's a zone 2 and it's not so long, and that's fine. I mean, it's going to change a lot depending on speed and length. But when you're doing those tempo runs, those are the ones you're really going to shoot for as sort of like markers to see where you're at. How's that sound?
Hey, Bob, that's kind of related to the question I was going to ask. So if you're shooting for, you know, something well over 50%, say it's 75% of your height for stride length, would that vary much between, say, a 5K and a marathon?
For us, yes. I mean, for MEB, no. So 5Ks, that will definitely tend to be the longest stride you do, but you'll also pick up your cadence. We're saying a cadence of 180, but I bet you when you go to do a 5K, you're going to run it at close to 190 because, you know, I'm telling you we want a nice stable cadence. In reality, that cadence is going to go up along with the stride length. But because you have a nice base, a nice solid 180, it's not going to be a huge difference if you go from 160 to 200 in your cadence. So, yeah, it'll matter a little bit, but it's not going to be a gigantic difference.
Okay.
Hey Bob, are you gonna send us those video links because I'm not like
Yeah, Bird said that. I am. I got all these links. I've saved them all. So what I'm going to do is email everybody on the call so that they can have all the links that I have up here, especially the drills one and ones you just can watch. And they also have other ones because you can click into other ones where you can watch people run in slow-mo. So yes, everybody will get a copy of each of the links.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that Bob was saying about, you know, don't measure, okay, it's going to be 2 weeks before you lengthen your stride or a month. Just be mindful every time you go out running as to how your body's moving. Don't just put on the tunes and zone out for an hour run. Don't put on the music. Think about the way your body's moving as you're out there running and try and work on little aspects, pushing off from the back, keeping your hips and your core engaged, keeping that head looking straight like there's a string pulling you from the top. Think about all these little things as you're running. Don't just go out there and mindlessly run. By doing that, you'll subconsciously lengthen that stride, become more efficient, and in doing so, become faster.